If you have a brand that you know and trust, and you go and buy an e-liquid or a e-cart that has that brand's sticker on it or whatever labeling they may use, identification, it could be counterfeit. So you're buying something that is completely different from what you think you're buying. You have no idea until you smoke it, and then you may find yourself in big trouble. Welcome back. Tom Peterson here with a video on Vaping CBD Beware, because it could be something else. In this video, I want to cover a number of things. I'm just going to kind of go through ultimately the list. I'm going to use my cheat sheet here because there's a lot to cover. So let's get on with it. First thing I want to cover is what are the risks associated with vaping CBD today, knowing what we now know. This is over and above what we've already been alerted to, which are the respiratory issues. I'm going to talk about a whole other category of things you probably aren't aware of. If you are, hopefully I can go into greater depth on it for you. Secondarily, what ingredients are they finding instead of CBD in e-liquids, in e-carts, okay, cartridges? What is this synthetic THC that they happen to be finding? What is it? Where does it come from? How is this all happening? And then, of course, where are these spiked or contaminated cartridges and e-liquids found? Where are people getting them? Where are they being purchased? And then, of course, how can this be happening? Because it is kind of crazy that this is actually all going on. And then what are the risks to you? And then, of course, what can you do to reduce or eliminate your risk altogether? If this can be of benefit to you, please subscribe. If anything like this moving forward, you want to keep it coming your way, subscribe to the channel. If this can be a benefit to somebody that you know or love who is a CBD vapor, or if they're vaping anything for that matter, please feel free to share it with them so they can benefit from this knowledge. And then also, if you like it, give it a thumbs up. If you don't, let me know why so I can make some changes to do it better. Let's move on though. So let's get started here. So here are the topics. The starter is, so these risks associated with vaping CBD, whether it be via a e-liquid or a e-cartridge. 4 main risks right now. The number one is the additives. So we already, again, maybe you haven't seen my first video, maybe you're not aware of this. If you're not, please check my prior video out. That is in relation to this Vaping Associated Pulmonary Illness issue that is prevalent. It's not as prevalent with CBD, however, at least in the studying that I've done and the research that I've read. It seems like it's more specific to THC vapes than CBD vapes. However, this thing with additives is still an issue that we need to be paying close attention to. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that today, kind of already did. Secondarily, let's talk about the vaping devices themselves. That is a problem because if you have a device that is not heating properly and is not heating things to the appropriate temperature, for example, an additive like vitamin E acetate, will not vaporize unless you're over 350 degrees Fahrenheit. If you're not heating that to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, it's not vaporizing. That's a problem. Even vaporizing, it's a problem, but it's a bigger problem when it's not. So cheap devices are problematic. They don't burn as they should. They're not consistent in the burn. That's something else you need to be paying attention to. Again, something that I've learned, wasn't aware of that before. Okay, but the main thing I'm going to cover 2 things. Contaminants, okay, and then counterfeits. Now, I'm going to refer to contaminants and spiking, kind of the same thing. It really is kind of spiking because these contaminants are being put in there purposely. In my opinion, it seems pretty obvious that's what's going on here. But the counterfeit thing is a problem too, because if you have a brand that you know and trust, and you go and buy an e-liquid or a e-cart that has that brand's sticker on it or whatever labeling they may use, identification, it could be counterfeit. So you're buying something that is completely different from what you think you're buying. You have no idea until you smoke it, and then you may find yourself in big trouble. So let's talk about these 2 things that are most prevalent right now and of the greatest concern to me and should be to you as well. Obviously, the vaping devices is big, but what's bigger is this spiking or contaminated CBD in e-liquid form or e-cart form. The biggest problem that we're seeing right now, that they're seeing, that I'm essentially reading about and learning about, is this synthetic THC. Now, this synthetic THC has been found in a lot of CBD vapes and cartridges, eliquids, etc. And so that's a big problem. Other things, though, that have been found, dextromethorphan, which is actually the hallucinogenic used in cough syrup. Okay, it's not a hallucinogenic used in cough syrup. It's an ingredient in cough syrup that's a hallucinogenic. Sorry. Okay. Fentanyl, which is a really crazy, nasty opioid responsible for over 30,000 deaths last year in the U.S. alone. Okay, that's something that we need to be paying attention to. And then also fungus and toxins associated with this fungus. Now, it's something that's not really all that prevalent, but it's there. They have found it. So those are the four things. I'm going to talk, though, first about this synthetic THC, because this is the most prominent by far of all of them in terms of these e-liquids and these e-carts that have been tested. So this synthetic THC, what is it? Well, it's essentially a designer drug manufactured predominantly in China and Russia and shipped over here to us. It's really, one of those things that has kind of come and gone throughout the black market, if you will. They're finding that it kind of is, there's a resurgence of it again. Having big problems in Philadelphia and New York and these cities with the homeless, mixing it with other things. But the reality is there's a lot of it coming in here, and it's cheap. So that's the problem, is it's much, much cheaper than CBD. So if somebody is able to sell you a CBD cartridge or e-liquid at a CBD price, but put synthetic THC in there, the margins are massive. Okay, this stuff is cheap by comparison, so inexpensive, but it's so nasty. It's so crazy nasty. I'm gonna get into symptoms and other things here. I'm not gonna go down a rabbit hole with all the craziness associated with it. I'll save that for another video because there's just so much going on out there. But I want to make sure you're aware of, at least the main portion of what's happening with that stuff and what it can do to you. Now, the other thing about this synthetic THC is it's been called K2 or spice typically. It does typically pass a 5-panel drug test. Okay, so again, I've never been dealing with that, so that's just what I've read. Apparently, it's a 5-panel drug test that's used for drug testing for jobs, etc. Okay, there are some drug tests that will test for it now, but it's rare. Most drug tests don't. They won't find it, and so that's why people have in the past utilized it. So that they can still utilize a drug that's not going to show up on drug tests, which is a little scary. But that's going to change too. Where these are being purchased, where they're being found, okay? So the Associated Press commissioned 30, and I don't know if it was e-liquid or e-carts, I think they were e-carts, 30 e-carts from suppliers nationally. Now, this is not on the black market. This is through suppliers, and again, don't have the details whether they were there online or what they were. But the scary part is, out of the 30 e-carts that they commissioned, 10 of them contained synthetic THC. That's a big number, when you look at, you got a 1 in 3 chance of getting the wrong stuff. On top of that, they found that a large number of them didn't have any CBD at all. An even larger amount had just trace amounts of CBD. And then there was a very, very small percentage that had some level of CBD, but not very much at all. So predominantly, you're buying, or they bought, cartridges that contain no CBD for the most part. In the process of that, contained a very, very hazardous designer drug. So 1 in 3. Now that was, I'm gathering, could have been through shops, and more than likely it probably was through vape shops, smoke shops, pop-up shops, things like that. The scariest part, though, in all of this is the Forensic Science International had purchased 9, and again, I think they were e-carts as opposed to e-liquid, from a popular online CBD retailer, okay, who on their website promoted no THC, less than 0.3%, all organic, completely pure, yada, yada, yada. All those things that we look for when we're trying to purchase a pure CBD product. They found that out of the 9 that they purchased, 4 of them had synthetic THC in them. 1 of them actually had the dextromethorphan. So 5 out of the 9 were contaminated or spiked with something other something on top of or instead of CBD. Now, that particular company, I've gone to the website. I'm not going to say who it is, but I've gone to their website. You go to vaping, that part of the website is down. Now, I think the rest of the website's still up. But again, this is a company that had, I think, some, relevancy online, as a company that you could trust. And, so how on earth does this happen? Well, there are a lot of reasons why it's happening. For starters, we have this whole regulation problem. So this lack of regulation is a huge issue again. So this is something that's going to have to change. But again, it's going to take time. And so the other part of it is you've got the DEA who's, just focus on so many other things. They've got so many other fires to put out with so many other issues, opioid, things and other illegal drugs that, they're constantly spending their time chasing down. So they're going to have to play some catch up too. But the other problem is this synthetic THC has continued to evolve in such a fashion that as soon as the United States outlaws a specific combination of this synthetic drug, they make enough changes in the composition, it then is no longer illegal. So this is the problem, is it has gone through so many changes to try and get around the banned substance criteria that now there's just this wide range of THC synthetics out there that can cause just a whole consortium of issues. And it all depends on which combination it is, what issues you may end up with, and it's getting pretty bad because the more they tend to monkey around with the chemistry, the worse, some of these side effects and some of these conditions get in the process. So not a good thing at all for that to be happening. Another thing, that's part of the problem is this, the fact that real marijuana is illegal. So of course there is demand for this synthetic because it doesn't show up on the drug tests, at least most drug tests. And in large part, it's available. And in a lot of states, last count, still 40 states, I believe, it still is actually legal. Crazy to believe, but that's the case. So I know that everybody's trying to get on top of this, from a statewide perspective and federally and what have you. But again, they're behind the ball on this one too. So that's going to take a little bit of time. So let's talk a little bit about who's behind this. Well, it's the crooks, the creeps, and the scammers. Okay, so people who are trying to find a way to make an extra buck, and they don't really care what they're selling. Look, you go down the street, how many places do you see selling CBD oil? Buy CBD oil here, buy it here. I'm sure they've got vapes they're selling there too. Where are they getting that from? Who are their suppliers? Do they even know what's in there? It's just bad news. There are just too many people out there who care more about making a buck than the impact of somebody's life, whether it's lost or destroyed or lives destroyed related to that. It's sad. So that's why we've got to look out for ourselves at this point. So what can we do? Well, let's talk a little bit first about the symptoms, all right? This is a long list. I'm going to try and keep it short. But if you happen to vape CBD and you happen to feel any of these side effects or symptoms, stop immediately. Don't smoke this stuff. Turn it in to the authorities. Have them check it out and see what's going on with it. But here we go. Agitation, confusion, dizziness, lack of coordination, sedation, okay, if it knocks you out, okay, seizures. CBD is not supposed to cause you to have seizures. If you're having one, that's not good, okay? Psychosis, and temporary psychosis to permanent psychosis. There are people that literally lose their minds on this stuff, and they never come back to earth, and they never were the same again. So that's really the scariest part about this, not to mention the respiratory failure, stroke, and then, of course, cardiac arrest and the impending coma. Short story, Jay Jenkins, I believe is his name. You'll probably see a lot about him. Young kid, freshman in college, I believe. Went to this shop, bought some of this spice or K2, took a couple puffs. Next thing you know, the dude's in the hospital in a coma. Fortunately, he survived and he was released. But again, this is the kind of crazy stuff that's happening out there. So my advice to you at this point in time, if you're going to vape CBD, maybe just stick to flower. I'm going to do another video on that, see if there's some suggestions I can make in terms of, just going back to the old school way of smoking some flowers, some green weed, okay? And doing it that way for the time being until they get some of this stuff figured out and sorted out and protect you as they should. But it's just overwhelming at this point. The other thing I would suggest is look into your supplier. Do the homework, do the research, look at the reviews. Just dig as deep as you possibly can to make sure that what you're buying is from a viable company. Make sure that the source that you're buying it from, it's not counterfeit, that there's no risk of it being counterfeit. You know, those are things you got to pay attention to. And then, of course, talk to your kids, okay? If you have kids, make sure that you have a discussion with them about this too. Vaping is very, very popular amongst kids. And we certainly don't want to have this, God forbid, happen to any of our children. It's bad enough that, you know, we run the risk of it happening to us, but God forbid that it happen to any of our children. So that's what I've got for now. I'll come back to you with more stuff. I'm going to continue to do more research and do more reading and see what I can find and share it with you. So thanks for being here. Again, if you love this, if this was good for you, subscribe. I need you here watching this stuff so you can learn more and be better educated. And of course, if this is good for somebody that you know or love, please share it. Appreciate the thumbs up. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.